Thanks so much, Mark. And thank you, Mira, for sponsoring today's sit. Sending you blessings. May your father's memory be an inspiration and a source of joy in your life. It's great to be here with all of you today, my friends, from near and far. And I pray that you're healthy and happy and that your life is unfolding with ease. As Mark mentioned, it's the 32nd day of the Omer. And we're going to be working with these two qualities, Netzach, animating Hod, or Netzach in the service of Hod. The way that I've come to think about the kind of main quality of each week and the sub-quality is that the main quality is really what we're hoping to cultivate in ourselves. So this week we're hoping to cultivate Hod, and I'll say a word or two about what that means in just a minute. And the sub-quality is the gateway or the technology through which we can then cultivate the primary quality in our lives. So Adi, thank you for being on tech here for us. If I could ask you to please pull up the text sheet. Here are these two qualities, Netzach, animating Hod, or Netzach as a gateway into Hod. The word Netzach in our tradition, that verb, lenatzeach, means to be victorious, to persevere, to endure. It carries all of those connotations. And Hod is closely related to the word hoda'ah, or the verb lehodot, which means to give thanks or to acknowledge what is. So this week, we're really working on cultivating and strengthening and deepening within ourselves this quality of Hod, the capacity to feel gratitude by coming into a clear and honest relationship with what is, with the nature of our experience moment by moment by moment. And again, we're going to enter through this quality of Hod. So when thinking of this quality of Hod, I often go to this, sorry, I apologize. When thinking of this quality of Netzach, which is going to animate our Hod, I often go to a source from Avot de Rabbi Natan, which is a commentary on Ethics of the Fathers, Pirkei Avot. And we're going to get there in a second. But before we do that, let's go to the bottom of the sheet, to the second page, Adi. And I just want to look at this beautiful quotation by Brother David Steindl-Rast. There we go. If you could enlarge that just a little bit. He teaches, we cannot be mindful without being grateful. We cannot be mindful without being grateful. As soon as we awake from taking everything for granted, there is at least a glimmer of surprise and a beginning of gratitude, right? And this is so moving for me personally and rings so true. When I'm really paying attention to what's happening in my life, and when I stop taking everything for granted, when I take a closer look, there is always a little glimmer of surprise and a beginning of gratitude. But as we all know, our default actually tends to be mindlessness and taking everything for granted. We stop looking, we stop paying attention because we fall into this kind of an attitude and a mindset where we convince ourselves incorrectly that we actually know what's going on. So Hod really is about bringing the fullness of our attention to what's happening here and now so that we might stop taking everything for granted and experience at least a glimmer of surprise and a beginning of gratitude. And as I said, this week we're going to work on cultivating Netzach in the service of Hod. So Adi, if I can ask you to go up to the text from Avot Rabbi Natan, which tells us a little story about how the famous Rabbi Akiva one of the greatest sages of all time in our tradition, how he got started, and how he became Rabbi Akiva. So the text relates, how did Rabbi Akiva get started? They said, that is, the rabbis related, he was 40 years old and hadn't studied a thing, right? Total ignoramus when it comes to Torah study. Once he was standing by a well, and he asked, apparently out loud, who etched this stone? In other words, how is it that there's this big hole in the rock, right, out of which we can draw water? And they told him the water that falls on it every day. Apparently there must have been, a river or a body of water nearby that was dripping onto the stone, one drop at a time, right? They then said to Akiva, have you not studied the verse, water wears away stone, from Job 14? Of course, that's not a very kind thing to say to someone who doesn't actually have any facility with Jewish scripture. But what Rabbi Akiva immediately did is he applied a kal vachomer argument to himself. Kal vachomer argument is a type of syllogism where we argue that if something applies in a less obvious case, then of course it applies in a more obvious case. And so Rabbi Akiva said, if something so soft can bore through that which is hard, is it not all the more so true that words of Torah, which are tough as iron, can etch their way into my heart, which is only flesh and blood? He immediately began to study Torah. He and his son went and sat with a teacher of babes. Akiva said to him, Master, teach me Torah. Rabbi Akiva took hold of a slate, as did his son, and the tutor wrote the letters Aleph and Bet. Rabbi Akiva learned them, Aleph through Tav, and he learned the alphabet. The book of Leviticus, and he learned it too. He continued to study thus until he had mastered the entire Torah. Right. So, Adi, we don't need the screen share anymore here. But this is the image that I always go to when I think of Netzach, right? It's not, because the word Netzach carries the sense of victory. Lenatzeach also means to be victorious or to conquer, to win a battle, right? But actually, if we go to this story, we can see that it's actually a very kind of gentle, soft perseverance, right? That allows us in the end to be victorious in whatever we're trying to cultivate spiritually in our lives. It's not hard, it's soft like water, right? And the way that it works is that it unfolds one moment at a time, right? With one little drop of mindfulness at a time, with one little drop of attention at a time, little by little, making a very deep impression in the heart and in the mind and in our being. So the invitation today is that we're going to follow Brother David Steindl-Rast's invitation to stop taking our lives for granted and to pay close attention moment by moment by moment. And in that constancy, in that perseverance, right, by dropping one little drop of mindfulness into our system, into our heart and mind and body, and then another, and then another, and then another, through this quality of netzach, of persevering, going the distance, right? But not by the sheer power of our will, but through this soft, gentle, refined quality of attention that we sustain and extend moment by moment by moment, right? To then come into an awareness of the blessings in our lives that are there all the time, but that we often take for granted. For those who stay on later, I'll tell you a little story about how I once practiced this myself. That's a little teaser. When I was sitting with my father as he was dying. But for right now, I'd like to give us some time to jump into practice. So let's settle in. Get comfortable and adopt a dignified posture that's simultaneously very soft. We're going for the perfect balance here between being very, very relaxed, soft like water, and very, very alert at the same time, so that we can stay awake and maintain this kind of constancy of attention. You can allow your eyes to close if that feels safe and comfortable for you, or if not, you can keep them slightly open, resting on a surface in front of you without focusing on any particular object. And make a pact with yourself that you're going to practice netzach, remaining still moment by moment by moment, keeping your body and mind relaxed moment by moment by moment, bringing the fullness of your attention and awareness to what arises here and now, one moment at a time. This is not a 12-minute meditation. This is a moment of mindfulness, one little drop of mindfulness, and then another drop of mindfulness, and then another drop of mindfulness. And then after time, it will add up and accumulate, and our system will become saturated with awareness as a gateway to gratitude, to being able to be with what is without the heart collapsing or turning away or withdrawing into itself or becoming agitated and aversive. And right here and now, you can begin with the first drop of mindfulness. Simply bring your attention to an anchor in the body. That could be the arising and passing away of your breath, if that feels like a safe home base. If that feels too triggering, you can instead pay attention to sounds as they come and go, or the feeling of contact between your body and its support. And often when we try to sustain our attention moment by moment, we bring a kind of unhealthy netzach, too much striving, too much effort, too much will. See if instead you can allow this quality of awareness to be very soft, very refined. Allowing it, as it were, to kiss or even glide upon the object of attention. And as you do, you might begin to recognize the utter freshness, openness, wondrousness of each moment that we are alive. Each moment a gift. Given by the whole universe, which conspires through an array of causes and conditions to make you feel loved and held. And of course, each time your mind wanders off and you bring a little drop of mindfulness to the wandering mind itself, holding it with softness, with warm acceptance, and then doing teshuva, coming back, you're strengthening your muscle of netzach and creating the conditions for naturally awakening to hod, to gratitude in the face of what is here and now. Maybe take just a couple more seconds, not to try harder to be present, but to relax more deeply into a soft, fluid, warm quality of attention. That can be with whatever arises, non-reactively. Know it clearly and experience it as a beautiful and indispensable part of life's majestic unfolding. Letting go of all effort and just being aware, awake, present. And because my wife is using our bell, I'll invite you to open your eyes when you feel ready. And as we turn toward Mourner's Kaddish.
So much, my friend. And friends, let's bring that practice of Netzach Shebahod, that energy, the dedication to the practice of both, whether it's reciting Kaddish or being present and being supportive for those who are, and to cultivate gratitude, to infuse our Kaddish with gratitude for those whom we're remembering today. And as always, you're invited to share the name or names of those you'd like to include in Kaddish in the chat box now or after we complete the Kaddish, and invite those who are joining to rise in body or in spirit for Kaddish. Yitkadal, Kadash Rabbi,
Amen.
Nama Dibra Chidute, Yamich Malchute, Chayechon, Yomechon, Chaye Tichal Beit Yisrael, Ha'agalat Ruchi V'inun
Amen.
B'nei,
Yehi Shmei
Shmei
Rabba
Rabba
Bavazara,
Barak
Amen
Olam
Mayam.
Barak Tabach Kahar Taman B'Nei, Hadar V'Taleb V'Talach Medrash Tach
Barichu.
Ela Mikol Birchata B'Shiracha V'Tishbacha V'Nechama V'Amiran Ba'alma V'Hu Yahei Shlama Rabba Min Shamayim Chaim Aleinu Yisrael
Amen.
Shalom Aleinu v'Yakol Yisrael.
Ya'akol Yoshvei Tevel Yibru Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Say shalom.
And friends, thank you so much for joining us for practice today. We'll be back again, of course, tomorrow at 12:30. You're invited to stay on for some questions, conversations with Sam about today's beautiful teaching, about your experience with the practice. I want to thank once again Mira Frank for sponsoring our practice today in loving memory of your dad, Stanley Frank, on the 40th, on the occasion of his 40th yahrzeit. Zichrono livracha, may his memory always be a blessing for you, Mira, and beyond in this world. And thanks to ID Stein, as ever, for holding our tech space with grace and skill. So if you're leaving us now, we hope you'll join us tomorrow for our Lag BaOmer, 33rd day of the Omer meditation at 12:30 Eastern Time. If not, we hope to see you soon and wish you an early Shabbat Shalom. So, my friend, that was beautiful. And want to remind folks, if you have a question for Sam you'd like to put, please put it in the chat box. And if you can, preface it with by putting question in all caps. I also, before we lose any more people, I want to let people know, and you're the first to know, that a week after Shavuot, the week of May 24th to 28th, for the first time since we began these daily sits, we'll have a single teacher leading the sits every day. That's my friend, Rabbi Sam Feinsmith here. And we'll be picking up on the theme of Shavuot, of revelation, of receiving Torah, and doing so through the practice of Jewish mindfulness meditation. So Sam is going to offer a week-long series of teachings at our usual time, a slightly different format, the week of May 24th to 28th, on standing or sitting at Sinai. Maybe you could say just a few words about that later, Sam, just to give people a sense about what that's going to be, better than I, certainly. So I love this, and I appreciate the opportunity to unpack it a little bit too. And also that Rabbi Akiva story has really been like, one of the things I'm really liking is that we've had certain Jewish narratives, classic narratives, which now I hope our people are associating with different sfirot or midot, and this Rabbi Akiva story as a Netzach story is such a great story. So, and I want to connect it with yesterday, Miriam, which was Tiferet Shebahod, and Miriam was talking about Tiferet, not so much in the sense of anava or balanced self, but more rachamim, compassion, and softness, the soft heart. So just to connect the dots, you beautifully brought that softness as a way of experiencing Netzach. And just want to I think it's worth highlighting what you did there, that Netzach, which is striving and effortful, or can be understood that way. This is a really important, I think, element of the practice as we presented at IJS, and giving you a chance to extrapolate on that. That effort does not necessarily translate into trying harder, as you were saying at the end, right? So maybe say a little bit more about how we engage in effort through softness by softening into it, because it seems a little paradoxical, right?
Yeah, thanks for that, Mark. We've been so culturally conditioned to think that to develop stamina, right, and get a job done, we need to engage in the kind of effort that wears us down, that depletes our resources, and that is deeply attached to outcome. And we have also been taught that our sense of worth is very much intertwined and hinges upon our capacity to perform in that way and achieve in that way. And there's a time and place for that, but our orientation is different when it comes to spiritual work. And we can then apply what we do, in our meditation practice to every other domain in our lives and see which sustains us more, right? The kind of effort that I just mentioned, or the kind of effort that is actually about letting go as a precondition to being able to actually go the distance in a sustainable way that ultimately affirms life and restores us to balance and strength and vigor. Um, and you can just check this out in your meditation experience. Put 5 minutes aside. Try to stay with your breath unremittingly through the sheer power of your will. See if it works. See how it feels in your body. See if it generates more peacefulness and energy and clarity in your mind, or actually drums up distraction, a scattering of attention, and a depletion of body and mind. In my experience personally, that kind of effort doesn't work at all in cultivating a concentrated mind that can be fully present and remain buoyant, open, and loving in the midst of difficult circumstances. What works is letting go of attachment to outcome, even as I keep my intention front and center, because intentions are aspirational and they serve like beacons or lighthouses that help draw us back to the path we had intended to walk when we fall away. And also, allowing the mind to rest back into its own natural spaciousness, right? Because the mind likes to be concentrated. It doesn't like to be diffuse and scattered and agitated. It likes to be concentrated and peaceful and unified. And actually, that's its essential nature. So we really just need to kind of stop feeding the activity of the everyday striving mind and rest back into the natural spaciousness of awareness, because awareness knows spontaneously our experience and meets it with love. And when we can do that, the mind becomes very concentrated and you can sit forever, right? And there's very little mind wandering and very little interruption. And the quality of attention becomes very vibrant and vivid and can penetrate into things and be with them with total equanimity and compassion, Mark. Right? So again, these are the kinds of things you can check out in the laboratory of your own sitting practice, and then also in your life. You know, you have a deadline to meet. What's going to get you there feeling peaceful, equanimous, calm, loving, right? And what's going to get you there feeling agitated, restless, annoyed, resentful, you know, questioning after you met the deadline whether you actually, did level A work, and how people are going to feel about you based on, the work you did and so on and so forth. These are things we can check out in the laboratory of our own experience.
I don't know.
I just want to also share a quick story. Sorry, Mark.
No, go ahead.
That I think speaks to this question of compassion and gratitude that arise out of netzach, right? But this kind of soft netzach. Again, coming back to that image of Rabbi Akiva in the well, right? And those droplets of water that fall ever so softly, one at a time, but over the course of weeks, months, years, decades, centuries, right, can bore a hole into stone, right? And sometimes our heart can feel like a stone, closed, blocked, hard, defensive, callous. I was sitting with my dad about a month before he died. This was January 2 years ago at this point, or a year and a half ago, roughly. And I knew he was going to die. He had Alzheimer's and his breathing had become belabored, and it was clear that his systems were beginning to shut down. So I went out to Denver to visit him in the nursing home, and my mom was there too. And it was just too painful for her to watch him. And And so she kind of went to sleep while I was feeding him dinner. I think that was her way of tuning out a little bit, you know. And I say that without any recrimination or judgment. You know, she cared for him for 10 years in our home, and you know, did a yeoman's job of that. But you know, I just felt that that was a time where I needed to be so soft and attentive, but really there, moment by moment by moment, you know, because I knew there was not a lot of time left. And so I was lucky enough because it was New Year's actually, that the main dining hall was crowded, and so they put us in this room alone with him. And I was able to feed him with great care, you know, one little bite after one little bite after one little bite. It wasn't easy for him at all times to swallow. And I was singing nigunim to him, you know, just so sweetly. And mostly things that he remembered from his youth, like stuff in Yiddish and Eifen Pripacek and liturgy, a lot of the morning prayers from Shabbat especially. And he was like totally somewhere else, you know, his affect was flat. But then after doing that for about an hour and a half, unremittingly, right, suddenly he woke up and he made eye contact with me. And I said, "Dad, do you know who I am?" And he nodded his head yes. And I said, "I want to tell you something. You know, I know that your life has become really, really difficult. And I just want you to know that all of your kids are doing well. We're all in good places. We're all doing good work. We all have good relationships, you know, and if you don't want to live anymore, it's okay." And I told him not to be afraid. I said, "You'll be enveloped in God's loving arms." And I asked his forgiveness for anything that I may have done to harm him. And I said to him that I forgave him for anything he may have done to harm me. And when I finished, he started crying. And I said to him, "Do you understand what I said?" And he looked right into my eyes and said, "Yes." So that was a moment of hod, right? Where the striving stopped, the effort stopped, and we were just communing with each other and feeling grateful to be able to have this experience with one another. You know, but it was made possible through this kind of very soft but persistent quality of netzach, of really being present with him, right? Moment by moment by moment, in a very loving and kind way.
That's just a gorgeous story, Sam. Thank you for your willingness to share it. And seems to me to be, we can apply it in so many different ways, you know, in so many different contexts. You know, and it's a powerful reminder that we don't need to understand netzach as a sledgehammer or as a bulldozer, right? As in that loving kind of, netzach can take a lot of different forms, and they can, when it's enveloped in that love and softness, as you're describing, it's infused with, you know, all the qualities that have come, that, you know, the prior qualities, chesed, gevurah, tiferet, right? Then it feeds into that. I wish I had a little bit more time because I wanted to talk about the surprise element, you know, the element of surprise that and the text brought up. So we'll save that for another time. We're gonna have a whole week. It's fine. We're going away for a week, so we'll talk then. May 24th, just to remind everybody. And yeah, this guy's a special guy. So thank you, Sam. Thanks, Adi. Thank you all for being here and for your incredible devotion to this practice, this community, showing up. You're in Netzach indeed, and a lot of hod, a lot of gratitude for all of you. So be well, everyone. Many blessings. We'll see you tomorrow, I hope.
Thank you, everybody. All the very best. Thank you, Mark and Dee.